Really the space to look at. Vodafone Idea FPO raised 18,000 crore rupees coupled to a subscription of fresh equity worth 2,075 crore rupees by an Aditya Birla Group company has triggered some optimism about the telecom sector. To discuss if Vodafone Idea survives, thrives, its impact on Bharti and Jio, we have Sanjay Kapoor, the former CEO Airtel, and telecom expert Prashant Singhal, who's also joining in. Gentlemen, morning to both of you, and thanks a lot for being with us on the channel. Sanjay, this whole Vodafone FPO has breathed life back into the telecom sector, right? It seems to be the dawn of a new era for the industry. But tell me, have we moved to a three-player market now sustainably? Has the macro environment now turned positive for the telecom sector? What are your views?
Yeah, good morning to the viewers and you. In my mind, the situation is still enigmatic. And from 2 points of views, as far as the market is concerned and the consumer is concerned, it's absolutely the right thing to have happened because at least three private players in a market like ours gives a lot of choice to the consumers and therefore brings that balance on customer service and experience over a longer period. But on the other side, even with the induction of these funds, that overhang of too little, too late will still be there till Voda Idea actually delivers and comes back into the fray. Now, what has happened over the last few years is they have lost their customers, they've lost their market share, they've lost their profitability. Now, all this put together, it's very difficult to imagine did not result in erosion of the brand value of VIL. Therefore, the high-end customers would have already moved to either Jio or Airtel over the past period. Now, if I play a catch-up game of putting in my network and begin to allure those guys to my network, will those high-end guys leave Airtel and Jio and come back? It's going to be a very hard sell. And therefore, first of all, they have to do a catch-up game on the experience, on the network experience per se, which despite of this money coming in and a very large portion allocated to the network, it'll take time before they are leveling up to the other two players who both of them have distanced themselves on leadership from VIL. So it's a catch-up game. The other, even if I put up a network, now is that enough to get my customers that I lost to these operators back on the network? I'm not too sure. I can only go by the examples world over that a third operator who's been left behind so much, has he ever given a challenge organically to the number one and number two? This precedence doesn't exist in any part of the world, right? So I think it's a very tall order for them. And will this money suffice? Because in 25, 26, the moratoriums will go away and they'll have to pay a lot of money to the government unless and until the government decides to convert all that to equity, which seems unlikely as of now. So if that is there, I think the odds are still stacked against them and the jury is still out.
No, you made some very, important points there. And, from my personal experience, I used to use Vodafone a lot and was very happy with the service. But when things started going downhill, of course, you port. And then to port back is something that is just an arduous task. So I take your point. Prashant Singhal, you've been tracking the telecom sector for very long. So there are three problems that need to be solved for Vodafone, right? As Sanjay was pointing out, lost customers, lost market share and lost profitability. Do you think they can get back on track on these three fronts?
Yeah, so I think, and firstly, good morning to everyone. But I think anybody who has an fresh infusion of funds, and especially when you've been virtually out of the market for a few years, I think it just creates a lot of excitement within the company. It creates a lot of excitement within the sector. And I think we've seen, as a sector, we have seen the Hexacom IPO bringing funds back into the market. And the subscription of Vodafone, or at least the offer which is there, is almost 7 times what the FPO is, which is one of the largest. So people do believe, I'm sure people do believe who are putting in the money that there is a possibility of this completely turning around. And once you get the money and once you get the excitement back, the market is still going to grow. It's not that telecom has stopped growing. So you can get a larger share of the market, or even if you get a fair share of the market, you can still be back in the game. And then, as I said, the excitement and the management team gets more and more excited. And with this funds coming in, then you have the ability of getting more loans and meeting some of those objectives. The entire ecosystem starts getting energized in order to help you succeed. So I think that's what we would see. And I think there's enough and more in the industry. In India, we've not seen, there are a few things that we need to do for the industry. Tariff increases, which are going to happen in the next few months, hopefully. And that's what everybody predicts is going to uplift the industry further and including all the players. I mean, number one, number two, number three. 5G monetization has not happened. So whilst we still have about 150 million customers or 160 million customers on 5G between the two top operators, but the monetization is yet to happen. And I think that's a big challenge. And maybe a third operator who can come in a bit late will not lose on the 5G game. So I think there is enough and more in the market for anybody to recoup. Obviously, there is a distance which is there. Will they catch up? Will they not catch up? I think the jury is all out. But I think the response that is there on the FPO clearly shows that there is a lot of interest and there's a lot of confidence in the company being revived.
All right, Prashant, you're making some valid points out there. Good morning, Nigel, on this side. The points that you made and the stock market reaction as well goes by that, for the time being, they'll survive. The question is, can they revive and then thrive? Do you think that's possible with the kind of money that they've raised?
I mean, India is a large market, Nigel, as we all know, right? And if you just look at world over, markets like this, which is India, US, large markets, you'll always have 3 or 4 players which are going to constitute the market. So thrive is subjective. I mean, I don't know what thrive means. You're running at a positive EBITDA. The EBITDA will grow. Obviously, you're away from the number one and number two. But the biggest challenge that this company always had was funding. And now if the funding issue is solved, there is going to be a lot more operational excellence. So yes, I would think that, in India, there's enough opportunity for 3 or 4 players to survive and thrive.
Okay, all right. Got that, Prashant. Sanjay, coming across to you then. The street stock market's bracing that we're going to get a rate hike that comes about, an ARPU hike that will come about post the elections. And it's in the vicinity, expectations are in the vicinity of around 15% approximately. I wanted your view on that. And is there a possibility that the other 2 large players, that's Bharti Airtel and Reliance Jio, say, let's not hike in the near term because we don't want to give these guys more legs? Or are you in the camp that believes that for the time being, they will not go ahead and hike and put further pressure on Vodafone Idea? Or do you believe that, yes, a price hike has to come about and we'll see that post-elections?
So there is a theoretical answer to it and there's a practical answer to it. I'll try and address both. From a practicality perspective, I think Indian market needs a hike on pricing desperately because we are really on the lowest end of the spectrum on pricing when you compare it across the globe. And if you look at the structure changes that are happening across the globe, a well-settled oligopoly structure in most markets is now really questioning the survival of an oligopoly and saying, will we become a duopoly because the capital cycles have shortened and a technology that used to last 10 years only lasts 4 or 5 years. And therefore, the third balance sheet and the fourth balance sheet cannot afford to reinvest at that frequency and stay competitive in the marketplace. And therefore, the top 2 players seem to be managing it despite 5G not being monetized. But the third and the fourth operator are finding it very difficult. Now, if that logic is true for the rest of the world, India can't be delineated. And if I come to India, who can lead the price changes and hikes? It can either be Jio or it can be Airtel. I don't see anybody who's playing a catch-up game with the leaders in the market and is so distanced on market share can have the guts to raise the prices in isolation. So they'll have to really wait until their networks comes of age and becomes competitive. They will not dare to raise prices. So that's a distinct disadvantage that you have. Can Airtel and Jio still raise prices if VIL doesn't raise? I think they can. I don't believe that now at least the high end of the market is going to shift back to VIL that easily. They'll have to really demonstrate sustenance and competitiveness going forward if they ever want those customers to even consider them. So I think that's the practicality of what happens. Now, with where Voda Idea is, I think there is a hindsight benefit that they enjoy. And that's what Prashant was alluding to. Voda and Idea have Jio and Airtel have invested in 5G, but they've not been able to monetize like rest of the world. They're not alone in that game. It's difficult to monetize 5G, and I think everybody has acknowledged. Now, with that hindsight advantage, I think VIL will not try to compete on 5G and try to monetize. They'll be very conservative on 5G rollouts. They will do it very selectively because they know that technology is not returning capital. I think their focus will be on 4G and becoming contemporary, because most of the applications today are equally manageable on 4G, and 5G is not really required till you need a low latency type of an application. That high speed requirement gets fulfilled by 4G adequately. So I think they've got a catch up game to play. They cannot raise prices on their own. It'll take a while for them to catch up, and Airtel and Jio have to take a call whether they want to increase prices devoid of VIL, or they have some fear that if we raise prices and those guys don't, then we might have some migration of customers. I wouldn't fear, because I think they've distanced themselves far too ahead to really worry about VIL till VIL really catches up on the customer experience.
Got it, got it. Just a couple of questions before we let you go, Sanjay and Prashant, for paucity of time. Sanjay, two-part question, right? This 45,000 crores, is it enough for Vodafone? If yes, for how long? And the interest that has come to the Vodafone FPO, is it Vodafone specific? Or do you think that there is a larger interest now in the telecom sector, and perhaps there could be a lot more funding, lot more investments into this sector over the next couple of years?
I think the first question, and I can only go by what I see because, I work with many telcos globally, and 45,000 crore to me is green shoots. It is not adequate to fight a battle with fully funded Jio and fully funded Airtel. I don't think that money can suffice. This can only suffice if they demonstrate a good revival of the company, and there could be more money following that money, right? Borrowing more or bringing more debt will also put burden on the company to service that debt. So it's not easy. They're already laden with a lot of debt, and to add more debt, yes, in the short run, you survive, you have cash flows coming in, but in the long run, you have to service that debt. And if you can't service that debt, then you'll either dilute yourself or there'll be other problems that you'll face. Now to say, has somebody backed India? People have been backing India. Jio has raised capital, Airtel has raised capital. They've never had a problem. So I don't think India had a problem. I think VIL and its survival had a problem. Now suddenly there are some people who believe that I think it's worth giving a chance to these guys, and given the size of India, and given the fact that Airtel, Jio have not been really able to make a virtue out of their 5G investments, there could be a play, because even by investing in 4G, these guys could probably survive and sustain themselves in the medium term. And I think that's where I say the jury is out, that we'll have to see how VIL really delivers and makes use of this money to be competitive. Unfortunately or fortunately, telecom game the world over is not in isolation. It is versus your competitors. If you are not good versus your competitors, the customers will figure it out very quickly, because eventually it is the experience that makes them stick. So I think it's not easy. They have to deliver after borrowing this money, but are there unlimited checkbooks open? I think people will wait for them to deliver on, this chance that the investors have given them.
Correct. Very helpful there, actually. Thank you so much for joining us, both of you, for helping us understand the way forward now with the money that has come into Vodafone, whether it's enough for them and whether they can get out of the problems that they've been sitting with for the last many weeks and months. Well, let's do one thing. Let's take a quick commercial break on that note. On the other